Good morning to you. Mark Stott with HurricaneTrack.com here. It is Sunday, the 31st of October, 2021. Happy Halloween to you. Couldn't let the month end without doing an update, especially since we do have subtropical storm Wanda out there. We have done it, exhausted the list of names once again. We used 21 out of the 26 letters of the alphabet. I don't know why. I didn't come up with that. It's not my thing, but it is the way it is. So subtropical storm Wanda. What does that part right there mean, the subtropical part? I will explain that as we progress here. A little bit short of an update today, but again, I wanted to at least get something out because, hey, it's my job, and hey, it's interesting that once again, the second year in a row, we have exhausted the list of names, and then you look at that, there's a yellow X there. That shouldn't be there. It's the end of October, knocking on the door of November, and we have a system that's 95L off the Cabo Verde Islands there in the southeastern Atlantic. What an interesting way to end the month. So here is a wide shot of the Atlantic basin. Here's the eastern part of North America over here. West coast of Africa right there. There's 95L. Doing pretty well for itself considering the date, that's for sure. And then there is subtropical storm Wanda. This developed from that powerful nor'easter that came off the continent and then eventually sat off the coast of New England. You remember all the flooding that took place, the high winds, the power outages, some of you just getting your power back on in eastern Massachusetts this last couple of days here. And then that system worked its way out over the Atlantic, shed the fronts that were around it. It's all about structure here and how we classify things. And voila, it's over warm enough water to have developed deep enough thunderstorm activity, organized enough around the center, again, shedding any fronts that are associated with it. It wasn't attached to a cold front, and as such, it is labeled subtropical storm Wanda. And a big reason of the subtropical part of that name is because it is not quite as concentrated as a typical tropical storm would be. It's a little bit more spread out. Got a pretty good band coming in here on the eastern side, well-defined circulation, but the pressure gradient, the overall difference in pressure over distance, that's the gradient, is not the same as we would see in a typical, more tightly clustered, warm core tropical cyclone. This is sort of a hybrid system, a mix between a mid-latitude storm and a typical tropical storm. It's over marginal sea surface temperatures, but it is and has developed deep enough convection and enough organization that the National Hurricane Center has named it Subtropical Storm Wanda, of interest, of course, to shipping, maritime interest out over that portion of the Atlantic. Notice the pressure at 987 millibars. That would normally be low enough for a hurricane, but it's more of a shallow system in the atmosphere. It doesn't have very deep convection, certainly not around the core, if you want to call it that, or at least the center, and so it's not quite structurally the same as what we would look for if we were to think that this might have a chance to become a hurricane. Looking at the vorticity signature here, there's 95L down in the deep tropics. Really, really interesting to see. Another little impulse trying to get going over here in the southwest Caribbean that might flare up just a little bit more. We can see that on the true color satellite imagery here, just a little bit of cloudiness, showers, and thunderstorms. But I think it's just kind of too little, too late. The overall pattern has just not favored this part of the basin like we thought it would. Kind of a big old monkey wrench got thrown into the overall situation here the last couple of months of the season. Really, once we got into mid-September and beyond, this big old tropical upper tropospheric trough kind of setup, just more low pressure down in this area, carved out in the southwest Atlantic, and that forced some of the higher pressures farther to the south down here, and so the tropical waves came by and had to slip pretty far south, ending up in the Pacific to develop. That's a simple way to kind of describe what happened, and that has meant a much, much quieter October, pretty much a blank until we got here to Wanda, than we saw last year and what was anticipated, and I think it's going to remain that way through the month of November. We might see something. You never say never. This is the area we would normally watch. It's a non-zero chance, as they say, that something could develop. But these big mid-latitude storms like this one, that's moving through. There will be more coming later in the week. Colder air coming down for the lower 48. We'll talk about that more tomorrow. But we're coming up on the last 30 days of the season, and as they say, that will pretty much be that. Here's a real quick look at the track of Wanda on the interactive tracking map off the HurricaneTrack Insider site. And as you can see, it's going to stay out over the open Atlantic. It'll add a few more ace points. Subtropical storms do count towards the seasonal accumulated cyclone energy. And then we'll see what happens down here. I'll show you the GFS in a minute with our 95L. Of course, we don't plot those just yet. Some sites do. Levi Cowan does a good job on Tropical Tidbits. Maybe we can talk to Will, our programmer, that produced this amazing map, and we can start plotting invests as well. Something to look possibly forward to for next year. All right, so looking at the GFS, this is the 6Z run. Not often do I show you the 6Z run. Usually I do these later in the afternoon. But we have Halloween parties and other stuff we got to get ready for today. So I'm putting this together kind of early for you. There is, let me make sure we can see it, there is the vorticity of Wanda at the 850 millibar level. And it's pretty compact there in the middle of this larger envelope of energy. But again, see how everything is just large and spread out across this very vast area, relatively speaking, of the Atlantic, covering many hundreds of miles across. The pressure gradient not quite as tight as we would see in a well-developed true tropical storm. This is again sort of a mix between this kind of a storm right here, mid-latitude storm, and enough of that deep convection that sort of falls in between, and we call it subtropical. Anyway, this is 95L, a pretty good little wind shift down here in the overall pattern. And it's trying, and pretty good attempt there, considering, again, that it's October 31st. Move this along into time. 95L just doesn't have enough to get itself a name. And so we'll wait and see. Do we get to go into the new auxiliary list? The name would be Adria, the very first one, if we get there. But there's Wanda kind of sitting around out there. Maybe by 54 hours, it's just a little bit more energized there. And if it's well-defined and creates an eye, we won't completely rule out that it could become a hurricane. Again, it'll look a little different. It won't have that deep, massive thunderstorm column with it that we think of in a typical CDO or central dense overcast. But GFS kind of painting an interesting picture there, at least in the lower part of the atmosphere, the 850 millibar level, at about 54 hours or so. Bottom line, this will be fascinating to watch. And let me just go back a little bit. We can see it on the broad shot. But these close-ups from weather nerds, for example, different people that have their own way of plotting these that we see on Twitter and Levi's site, etc. There'll be lots of ways that we can zoom in. We'll just have to see, does it develop deep core convection, so to speak, deep enough anyway, and an eye around that, an area of calm and warmer temperatures in the center, and sinking air there in the eye, that it just might become a hurricane. I wouldn't say it's zero, but I'm not banking on it either. Nevertheless, it moves on out, clears the pattern eventually by 3-4 days and beyond, and then nothing else really gets going, but just a little bit of a flare-up right down there in the Southwest Caribbean. Counterclockwise rotation. You know, it's part of the way the wind comes off of the mountains of Colombia, and it's, you know, kind of geographically related to just the way the wind flows are down there. And there is some energy too, you know, the tropical wave energy. We'll see. Maybe it gets a brief mention from the National Hurricane Center. Maybe it doesn't. We'll just wait and see about that. But overall, and you see it does just a little small, I don't know. It could be interesting there as we approach day 6. That's a ways out, almost a week out. So, you know, if I were to bank on it, maybe something pops up down here. Look, they're trying to still develop in the Eastern Pacific. It's just nuts how the pattern has been. And this is basically a week out. That's pretty far out into time. And, you know, GFS suggesting maybe another system developing subtropical-esque features. But look, you can see it's attached to these fronts in here. I'm getting ahead of myself. This is a week out. We will wait and see how things evolve as we get into November. 30 more days. The landfall threat to the United States is as close to zero as I think we can get. It's just the way it is right now. you never say never because you don't know for sure. Anybody that says that they absolutely know, well, it's a heck of a good guess. Statistically speaking, it's really hard to hit the lower 48 with a tropical system in November. It's not impossible. Still have to worry about our friends in the Caribbean. I say worry. Certainly keep a wary eye out for any potential trouble, but I don't see anything coming over the next several days. We'll take a look at what might be ahead for November, as well as some lower 48 weather stuff tomorrow in the usual much longer and more in-depth hurricane outlook and discussion tomorrow afternoon. All right? Have a great rest of your Sunday. Be safe out there. Watch out for the little guys, the goblins, the ghouls, the ghosts, the ETs, the whoever's, and whatever characters you may be, or, just be careful. We need everybody back. If I don't have you watching these videos, then what good is it for me to do this, right? But seriously, do be safe out there. Watch for the little folks that are trick-or-treating and let them enjoy it. And I will talk to you again tomorrow. I'm Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. We'll be back and do it some more tomorrow afternoon.